Hi, I'm Pete Shau. You may know me from the RTO Show podcast, but today I'm doing something a little bit different. APRO and WOW Brands have launched a special project to bring the story of our industry to life like never before. They've asked me to sit down with some of the true legends of rent-to-own, capturing their stories, their impact, and their vision for the future. And now I get to share those conversations with you straight from the legends themselves. All of this leads to something groundbreaking, though. A new book, The Rent-to-Own Revolution, A Definitive History of Advocacy and Consumer Access, written by APRO CEO Charles Smitherman and WOW Brands CEO Brian Krast. The book explores the grassroots of RTO, the advocacy that has defined it, and the future that we're building together. Here's where you come in. We're giving away free copies once the book is released. Just head over to the RTORevolution.com and sign up for a chance to receive a copy in early 2026. Don't miss the chance to be among the first to hold this piece of RTO history. That's RTORevolution.com. Check it out and become a part of RTO history. Hello and welcome to the RTO Show. I'm your host, Pete Shau, and today, I gotta say, I've got Mike Strong here with his family. And this is the first time that I've had three guests on at one time. I've done two. First time I've had three guests with a legend and the family. I gotta say, it's awesome to see you guys here. How you guys doing today?
Great. Doing great.
All right. So when we talk about Mike's Rent-to-Own, I mean, you guys are one of the longest independent dealers in rent-to-own. It's 44 years this year. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
44 years as a standing independent. And you got the family with you. You know, sometimes you hear one, somebody's following up, and sometimes there's family in the background, but you guys are like really in it as far as, I mean, the whole family's a part of this deal.
Yeah, we've been real fortunate to be able to work together for a long time, and it's worked out really well for us, and it's been a lot of fun too. And I think that all started when Angie and I were, I don't know, when we moved here, was I 6, 7 years old?
18.
I think, yeah, 6 or 7 years old.
Angie would have been.
I would have been a year old.
Yeah. Angie was one, so you had to be 6.
Yeah. And we've really grown up in the business. I mean, really, ever since we were itty bitty. So, in a way, it's what we've always known, but also it's what we really love doing.
Well, I can tell you, rent-to-own is definitely in the family, and you guys show it. Now, to give credit due where it's due, the idea was to have Mike on, and then Mike Tissot said, there's a lot of people to be had on there, and I don't even know why I didn't think about that. Having you guys on at the same time I'm grateful for the idea. I love the idea. But Mike, I want to go to you right now. And I want to go back a little bit because this is the Legend series. We want to kind of know where you started, what roots you had that kind of put you where you are today. So going back a little bit, you were in the military. Is that correct?
I was in the military for 2 years, but I was
what branch were you in?
In the Army. I was a medic in the Army. A
medic? So this was in the Vietnam War?
Well, that's when the Vietnam War was going on. I was stationed in Chrysler Hospital. And you're probably not familiar with that, but it's located at Pearl Harbor over in Honolulu.
Oh, wow.
I went in basically when the Tet Offensive was going on, which a lot of people have heard of. But they needed a lot of medics, not in Vietnam, but they needed at different locations where they evacuated the injured soldiers so they could take care of them. So that's where I went, and I saw a lot of things there I'd like to unsee, but
I can imagine
it was a lot better than being in Vietnam itself. My brother was over there at the time, so they didn't send me over there.
Well, I just want to say, we appreciate your service. Thank you for that. Now, after those 2 years, you ended up in Hutchinson, Kansas. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
No. Okay, so what brought you to Hutchinson, Kansas then?
Well, me and a guy named Fred Herman spent about a year looking into the rent-to-own business because he was working for a dealer in Springfield, Missouri that had gotten into the rent-to-own business, and he was a Curtis Mathis dealer. And so at the time, Curtis Mathis was a real popular franchise. So they had 2 locations where you could open a Curtis Mathis franchise. And of course, Curtis Mathis was in the rent-to-own business too.
Right.
And one of those was in McAlester, Oklahoma, and one was in Hutchinson, Kansas. And we went to both places, and we chose Hutchinson, Kansas. And that's how I wound up here.
So I got to ask, a medic in the Army, you're in probably one of the most prolific wars that happened in the last, century. How did you get from there, from being a medic in the military to opening up a rent-to-own store?
Well, when I got back from the military, I finished my college degree, and then I went to work in management for the Chrysler Corporation, which was in St. Louis, and I went up there and worked for about 9 years. That's back when Lee Iacocca was the president of Chrysler. Anyway, it didn't take me very long to realize that if you're working for somebody else, which obviously I was, you could determine how much money you're going to be making 20 years down the road, because you kind of look at how much the pay raise you got every year.
Right.
Well, the job I was in is for that time is very lucrative, but I didn't want to keep. It just tied me down too much. And so when Fred and I got enough money, we decided to get into rent-to-own business, because the guy he was working for was having pretty good luck at it. So we took what we had, which was a pickup, good credit, and a little bit of money, and we moved to Hutchinson, Kansas, and got started. Well, quite a bit, because they at the time the only thing we offered for rental was Curtis Mathis electronics, and so we had TVs, VCRs, and that type of stuff. We didn't have any appliances or any of that stuff, but the Curtis Mathis brand at that time was really popular, and they basically had a slogan of it's the most expensive TV in America and darn well worth it, which was
That's right.
marketing concept. Worked real well. And
I remember seeing one of those commercials. The guy was sitting in front of the TV with the family, and I think they had owned it for like 17 years or some ridiculous number. But it was great. So you start there.
The timing at that time was when a lot of people today complain about the high interest rates. Well, when I started in business back then, the interest rate was 18%, and that's what that's to pay to finance inventory. So, when people complain about 6%,
Been there, done that.
It's kind of bad timing on that from that viewpoint.
Totally. So, there's a lot of people say that in Kansas at that time, there was a lot going on in rent to own. You had spotted this opportunity to decide to go with it. What was it about rent to own that kind of stood out to you more than any other direction that you can go in? I mean, you're doing Chrysler. You have the ability. You have a degree. You've gone to the military. What made you decide this is the direction I want to go in?
Well, it was, like I said earlier, we spent about a year looking at the numbers, and so we decided it was more lucrative than what we were in. And then we talked to the guy in Springfield who was in that business, and we talked about a lot of the things we talk about today. It was kind of a relationship business with the customers, and it's never 2 days the same. Just back then, just like it is now, and it's reasonably new. I mean, it's kind of a new business to get into. So we decided that was the place for us, and we gave it a try.
So then Hutchinson is that store number one?
Yes, it is.
And it's still there today, right?
Oh yeah, that's where we are. That's where we're sitting.
Oh, awesome. So from what I understand, I don't know how recent the count is, but it's up to 14 locations right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Absolutely. That's amazing. So getting up to this growth, you got 44 years, you're starting now. You've got one store, you're going to 2 and 3. What were some of the hurdles when you're opening up a brand new location? You're really in an industry that's in its infancy at that point in time. I mean, you kind of helped pioneer some of that. What were some of the challenges getting into this industry that really a lot of people didn't know that much about?
Well, to be honest with you, the challenges weren't near as much then as they are now. The big challenge was basically politics and the IRS and things like that cause you lose a little sleep. But as time went by, thanks to organizations like APRO, that all got worked out, and we just kept going. To start out, there was me and Fred and a couple of delivery guys, and we basically we rented all we could. We sold a lot of Curtis Mathis too, and we would close at 6:00, and after we closed, we went and delivered the product and started again the next day.
So, guys, now that you're sitting next to Dad, how many late night deliveries did you guys do?
Yeah. Well, I think the ironic thing in the story that Dad's telling you right now is the first location that I was able to manage was our Newton location. I was probably 20, 21 years old right in there. And it started out as a pretty small rent to own location. Didn't have any employees. And so that same mentality
Is that the one that went bankrupt?
would you quit?
It's still there.
Haha. Okay. But at that time, there were no other employees. So it was that same mentality that it was like, well, you're going to work all day. And I lived here in Hutchinson and, driving over, it's a 45-minute drive over there. I ran the store over there during the day. And then in the evening, I would, find somebody from, needed kind of a couple hour gig and would come and help me do deliveries, or I would go do the deliveries myself until I could afford having an employee work with us. And that's just kind of I think that, for my brother and I, that's something that my dad has really instilled in us is, the hard work and everything that goes into
Absolutely
being in a family business. It's, there's, obviously the benefits of it, but it's something that you have to work really, really hard at as well. And so I think the hard work side of it is something that Dad really showed us from early on.
So talking about hard work, how young were each of you when Dad pulled you into the business?
I think
I'm not sure he pulled us into the business. I think it was more he tolerated us being down here.
Okay.
But I don't know. You were.
I was pretty little. I was a year old when Dad opened, and but I can tell you, I used to sit on the counter, and I think I remember Shannon talking about running the cards, and everything was green bar and by hand and writing it all down. And we remember those early days of him doing that, and obviously we're still here, but I don't think it was a matter of Dad pulling us in. It was just life. This, where we sit right now was really daycare in a sense for us. We came down here and
That's true.
Hung out with customers and, squirreled around with Dad, and Michael did deliveries.
I remember you being sat on the counter and helping post payments on cards. And
oh, wow.
I don't know if you remember, Pete, when we, before we were using computers, we had, I don't know what the two boxes were called, but we had a box of cards that payments hadn't been made yet. And then we had a box of cards where they were made. And then she would help post the payments and then move the card to the net, to the box where they'd been paid. And then of course you had to alphabetize those. And
we used to literally call them cards.
Yeah.
We called them cards. I mean, who paid, how many cards you have left to collect or whatever the case was. And we just called them cards. We kind of wrote on them any way that we could. We had a couple of guys that didn't know how to write very well, which was terrible. You didn't know when the next due date was. Dude, you got to get this right. But it was good because as it went on, we took that information, we took that structure, that it was kind of like, no matter how this is going to go down, we're going to make it work. And eventually when the computers came, it made things so much easier. Now, Green Bar was the first thing that I went to after that, which was, I don't know how much better that was, but on that Monday morning, we would get there at 7:30 and just list everybody that was due from Saturday and just let it do its thing for a couple hours or however long it took. But, I think, I don't remember which legend we were talking to, but that's literally what we called it forever. Even after the Green Bar came, even after nowadays, I still call it, sometimes cards. And the guys are like, what are you talking about, cards? And I'd like, listen, I'll let it fool you. Okay. We still need to get a number. But, it's funny that you mentioned that. And as you go along, well, when did you guys first get digitized? Since you guys were both a part of that, everybody, when did Mike's first get digitized into a point where you didn't have to have the cards anymore?
Do you remember when I don't remember when they first got rent-to-own software, but I do remember the first, do you remember the first computer that we had that had that hard disk?
Fred set that all up. It was what I don't know the name of that computer now.
Pete, this thing, there was a hard drive that was just a little bit smaller than an old VCR, and it was sitting. The whole computer took up a big card table, or a big folding table, and when you would press enter or whatever or save, that hard disk would start spinning. and you could hear it sort of rotating, and there was a red light that would flash. And if you bumped that table while that thing was spinning, poof,
You would lose the end of day.
Just and
My
I
gosh.
remember that I was one of the first ones, and there'd be these, that was one of those old, the old original, real wide dot matrix printer, and
Yeah.
you'd be trying to print reports, and that stuff would be flying out of there, and it'd be all, off a half line, and you couldn't read anything.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, I used to hate that. When I first started, and it might not have been as far back as you, but when I first started, we were still using, we were coming out of the cards, getting into Green Bar, and we had gone to High Touch, and they had those floppy disks every night that you had to throw in there every night to make sure that whatever it was. I just found out the other day, I really never paid attention to it. They're like 5 megabytes. I mean, we have pictures that take up that much information.
Right.
And it's crazy how you had an entire store that can close on one of those floppy disks, and you can, save it to start your business up the next day. It's crazy how it is nowadays, because our phones could have probably run the business better than that back then. So it's just crazy how much it's come along. So Mike, I got to ask you, I got a question for you. As you're coming through and you're creating Mike's Rent-A-Own and you start going, what were some of the biggest changes that you've seen over the years? As far as what you care. Now, obviously getting digitized was a huge difference from where it was to where it is now. Nowadays you took a look at whenever you want to, whether it's Versa, Rent, Revo, whatever the case is, and you see these things in there. Completely night and day. But what were some of the issues, the stepping stones that you first saw going into the early 80s, the late 80s, the early 90s, that you saw there were pretty big changes that had happened?
Well, probably the first big challenge I really had to face was we had been in the Curtis Mathis business for several years. And then Curtis Mathis himself was flying to Cincinnati, Ohio one year. Of course, he was flying first class. And on that flight, every passenger that was in first class died because of some kind of fire that started, and then it started up in the first class area.
I did not know that. I only know that he died.
Yeah, everybody in first class died.
Oh,
and
wow.
They it's a bad deal. And anyway, he died, and his wife, which was about, I think she was in her 20s, a lot younger than him, and knew nothing about rent-a-own or nothing about building TVs. So she hired the guy that was president of General Electric, and he took over, and he made some really unfortunate changes. And so it was not long after that Curtis Mathis went bankrupt, and we had to find another brand. So we went with Zenith. So that was just a really large change, and it took us a while to get over that. So, but anyways, it turned out to be a good deal. When we switched to Zenith, we added appliances and furniture and all that, and it turned out to be really good.
Going through some of these Legend series, I'm starting to find out that as they were growing, right, you're finding new products to put on the lineup. Furniture, actually, which I thought was going to be the easier one, seemed a lot harder back then. The lines were a little bit more, dedicated to the retail sector. They wanted to have their fancy names on it and want to make sure that, they kept that true to the nature of their retail sale. Yeah. Who was it that came on first with Mike's Rent-A-Own that you were able to land and say, this is worth me putting in my locations?
You talking about products?
Furniture product.
Like a vendor.
Oh, we were fortunate. There's a guy named Dennis Rice who's not alive anymore, but he lived here in Hutchinson, Kansas, and we would go down to the furniture market and can't think of the name of the town in Tupelo, Mississippi. And we go to that furniture market, and you're right. Some of the lines were just not feasible for rent-own, but we'd go down and we'd find whatever we could, and we'd get it shipped up here, and it worked quite well for a lot of years. And I think not too long after that market closed, but it's we had really good luck with that. And then, of course, we sourced some furniture. There was actually a little, it's where Angie opened that store up in Newton. There was a bedding factory there, so we bought mattresses from them. So we had furniture and mattresses and coffee and end tables and all that stuff, and that worked real well for several years. And then, of course, as time went along, a lot of the vendors realized they were kind of missing some opportunity with rent-own, and we got to where we get a lot better furniture, a lot more furniture, at a little more reasonable price, and so here we are.
It's a crazy story because there's always that one, right? You go in there and everybody's got their door shut, and that one person opens that door just a little bit to rent to own, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, we've been missing the boat for how long?
Right.
And then it's like if you would have just given me the trust from ahead of time and just this is a business transaction, I will buy it regardless of the situation. Money's money, right? So you invoice me, I'll take care of it, and let me sell it on my end and offer great products to our customers. I never understood that. That was something that as I came in, we really didn't have those issues. I think everybody was willing to sell the rent to own depending on the situation. I'm glad that we have.
You go to some of those shows, and if you told the vendor representative that you're in the rent to own business, they'd hardly talk to you. And then
Right.
that's gotten a lot. That's gone away now, but that's kind of what you had to deal with back then.
Nowadays, we would just want to make sure that we got the right styles that we need nowadays, right? I mean, we don't want anybody to fall behind. So as you're going through the years, what are some of the product categories, and the three of you guys can chime in on this, what are some of the product categories that you thought were a little bit different or kind of created that, I would say viral. It wasn't viral back then, but you brought something in, you're like, that was a hit. That was something that really kind of changed the way vendors looked at us. That was changed the way customers kind of walked in the store. You have one of those. That's what I'm talking about. I like that. And what were some of those things that you guys can remember starting off and until now?
I think, and like the very first thing that would have been initially when Dad had gone from Curtis Mathis over to Mike's Rent to Own, he had a movie club. And that came along with VCRs and camcorders. The camcorders, the game systems, I think was right after that with like a Nintendo 64.
Well, the original Nintendo.
Yeah.
Before that.
Yeah.
Yep. That was a big deal.
I think, then kind of pushing the envelope forward a little bit, providing access to customers for game systems. Of course, tires, cell phones, things like that, has very beneficial, not just for us, of course, but for the customer as well.
I remember the first time that we got laptops in the store. And I remember a conversation that we had about laptops and renting them. And somebody said, which you'll hear other people talk about this too, but somebody said, well, gosh, you're going to rent to own a laptop. They're going to put it in their car and drive around. I mean, that's not like a sofa.
Right.
We said, really, Dad, you said, I think, well, gosh, but what happens if they rent it from us and they don't do that? What happens if they rent it and they pay us and it works great? And I just now imagine, we're so far past computers now. I mean, that's just a normal thing. But imagine if you didn't have those kinds of products in your rent-to-own store now. It's just a normal of course we have that. Of course we have Apple. Of course we have, whatever gaming computer you want. Of course we have PlayStation. I don't know how many years ago it is now, but there was a time where that was not normal. And we really figured out fairly early on that it was really more about what the customer needed and what the customer wanted, instead of, well, this brown sofa, this brown recliner, this blue recliner, those are rent-to-own products and nothing else is. It's a basic washing machine. It's a basic refrigerator, for example. We figured out early on that our customers wanted nice things. They didn't want the basic, brown sofa. That's not what they wanted.
Right.
And when we started focusing on what they were telling us, that made a big difference, whether it was a laptop or different kinds of furniture or step-up appliances or whatever it was.
But I think something helped us a lot back in those days. I don't know what year it was, we started running a commercial. It basically said, you ran anything, tell us what you want, we'll get it for you. And I distinctly remember running this commercial that said, we'll rent anything. If we don't have it, we'll get it for you. And if we can't get it for you, you don't need it.
Well, going off subject a little bit, to staying where you're at, I remember seeing a social media, a couple of commercials on social media with you and Angela kind of talking about the Black Friday deals and what's going on. And that was a little bit off the cuff, but it was great. It was like kind of just showing your personalities and what you guys offer. And I think you said that exact things. Like, if we don't have it, you don't need it. I love that tagline, by the way. Just wanted to say that.
You never know what might get said.
Michael, talking about things that stood out to me during that time frame when we were trying to figure out what would work and what wouldn't work, because there was a lot of things out there that, even as being the entrepreneurs that Rent to Own had, there were questions like, if I put it out there and it's not something that's nailed down or something that, two people have to carry, where is it going to go? And I think the first product that came out that I was really like into trying to figure out and how would it stick. And I hope I don't get it wrong because I don't remember. I believe it was an iPod, like an iPod Touch. It kind of came out with that big wheel, and it basically just had a black and white screen that you can put like a million songs on. And back then that was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I have this. But I was worried. We carried like the big one, the iPod, and it was like the iPod. There was a smaller one, and there was like a Nano or something like that. These really small ones. And so when they came in, I'm not going to lie, I was on that boat and I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to rent this and I'm never going to see them again. And then actually the crazy part of that is, like you said, the other side of that was it sold so fast, which is something that I never saw coming. And at that time, Apple wasn't the Apple that we know now. I mean, Steve Jobs was still alive, but it was like an iPad or an iTouch, not the same thing. I mean, we're talking about their infancy, and it took off. And like, we were trying to get all the weird colors that they started carrying and all. And it was like, everybody didn't know where it was going to land, but it took off so fast that, eventually we started getting into the iPods and then the iPhones and all. And it was like, how do we even question that this was a good idea? When your customers want it that bad, it's just a move that you've got to make. So, I've got a question, because you mentioned Tupelo. Did you guys ever go to Tupelo with Dad?
No, we didn't.
No.
We didn't start traveling to shows until, I don't know, it was quite a while after that. I don't. We were for quite a while, Pete, we were still trying to figure out where the light switches were and just how to operate. We didn't need to go anywhere, and he probably needed to go somewhere just to get away from us for a little bit.
Well, was Tupelo like, Mike? Was Tupelo like going to, like, let's say North Carolina, like High Point? Was it like that?
Well, there's a lot like Las Vegas. I never did go to North Carolina.
More like Vegas?
Yeah. Not as big as Vegas, but the thing about Tupelo, we drove down there. It's like a 10-hour drive from here. And you'd pull in and you'd see like probably 15 or 20 Curtis Mathis tractor trailer trucks lined up out in front of it. And it's you just basically go in and walk around. I bought a lot of mostly furniture down there a long time ago. But then I think it went out of business when Las Vegas opened, and so it's just I assume it's not there anymore. But mainly the thing that seemed to not to change the subject, the thing that seemed to help me the most was I started going to APRO and TRIB, and you almost every show I went to I would learn one or two good ideas, and a lot of times some of the time anyway, it wasn't necessarily just about what you would learn. A lot of times you'd learn what to do. Sometimes you'd learn what not to do. And so,
isn't that just as valuable?
Yeah. So if it wasn't for TRIB and APRO, and for sure TRIB, I probably wouldn't be here today. I mean, I've learned a lot at those shows, and of course, as time went by, I got lazy, so they go now. But sooner or later, I remember the first time I went to Las Vegas, it was really exciting. But after you go there, I don't know how many times I've been there, too many. And so I don't get that excited about it anymore. But
the last time that I went to the Las Vegas Winter Market, it was an opportunity to see a lot of things that I hadn't seen in Rent to Own. I don't know if I would bring all of it into Rent to Own, but then I go back to what you said, Michael. Is that the idea that kept us from growing, right? So I definitely wanted to go and see a lot of the things that they had over there. And let me tell you, I saw some amazing things. I did see some of our old friends. Ashley was there, and a lot of the other groups that we have were there, but I absolutely loved it. It's crazy to see furniture in that many. I mean, there's floors and floors and floors of furniture. I mean, it was just the most mind-boggling thing that I've ever seen as far as furniture goes. So I absolutely loved it. It was a great time. Talking about big towns and little towns, you guys have seemed to really been able to dominate medium to small towns. That's what I mean. You have these amazing stores, and are any of them in really big cities, or have you just stayed in more rural areas where you know how to really maintain the rent to own?
Well, I think you're in Florida. We're in Kansas. I don't know if you've been to Kansas before, but most things in Kansas are rural and small.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of big cities, Pete, but uh, the mainly, like when Dad opened, he chose a town that was fairly small, and we've really made a conscious effort to keep our footprint where we can have quick, easy access to our customers as well as our coworkers, and made it something where it's, a 30-minute drive, a 45-minute drive kind of max from each one of our locations to make it very simple. And that just happens to be the footprint where we follow along, happen to be small to medium sized towns, really.
Is that part of the success? Would you say
I
keeping
don't
it very close and personal to the people that you have,
Oh,
your clients?
sure.
absolutely.
I don't think that the size of the town specifically or how large the town is, can be correlated with the success of rent to own. I think the majority of the people in our industry, whether they got into the business via family, we're all extremely tight knit with our customers. It's, as you know, a relationship business. And the
Yes.
majority of our customers are, we see generation after generation come through our stores. Some of them have watched my brother and I grow up, and some of them we're watching them grow up as well and have gone through relationships with them. And so I think it's more that. I think it's the personality, how you treat your customers. I think that's more the success of it, and really giving our customers a place to come, whether they're coming to just kind of hang out and chit chat, because some of them still do that, or they're coming to a place that, you're not going to tell them no. You're going to find a
Oh
way
yeah.
to rent to them. Unfortunately, a lot of them are used to hearing the word no. Fortunately for us, we get to be the ones to tell them yes. So I think that it's more that as opposed to the size of the town.
Yeah, another thing about that and being told no a lot for a lot of our customers is that when they're in a smaller town, they're already underserved. A lot of them don't, they don't. Some of these tiny towns, they don't have a grocery store to go to.
Mhm.
What are they going to do to get a refrigerator? And we're able to help them get a refrigerator or a TV or a PlayStation or whatever it is they want, or whatever it is that they need for their house. I mean, if you live in a rural part of the state of Kansas, you don't drive right down the street, stop at your Starbucks, and then go to the big box store to pick out your refrigerator. You come and see us. And the reason why they come see us is because of the relationships that we've worked over the years to build, and because we treat them right, and because, like Angie's saying, we say yes, and we find ways to get them what they need.
Well, the reason I bring it up, and I agree with you 100%, Michael, I 100% agree with what you're saying. And Angela, I think you guys are making a great point. I do know that in Florida, we have some big cities that are suffering. They're not doing as well as they could have been in different or other time frames as they are now. 2025 has been a little hard. The end of 2024, going to 2025. I'll just say it out loud, post-COVID years were not as easy as it was before. There was a huge increase in sales and customers. And then afterwards, it's ended up a little hard. I've actually seen a few stores close this year, unfortunately. Well, where I've seen that the larger areas, the city areas that have kind of declined a little bit, they're doing a lot more consolidation. So instead of seeing 2 or 3 stores, you'll see one larger store. But then in the rural areas, they've actually managed to grow through 2025 and maintain very well. And I've met a couple of young-minded entrepreneurs that are like, I don't know if I want to open in the city right now. I think finding those niches out there and being closer to the customers, like you're saying, if there's a big drive between where you are and where you need to be to get what you need, and we can kind of interrupt that and we can intercept that, where we don't just have one thing. I mean, there's the appliance side, there's the electronic side, there's the computer side, there's the furniture side. There's a huge place to put your foothold right in between where they're going and where they are. And not only that, the relationship, like you said, when you build that relationship, what are they coming back for? Well, pretty much everything at that point. I mean, we have game systems to refrigerators. whatever you need, like Mike says, if we can't get it, you don't need it, right? It's just one of those situations where I love that statement because it's exactly true. So that's why I bring it up. I mean, I think some of the cities would kind of fare better. Maybe they need to watch this episode and find out what's going on. But so
you mentioned being close to your customers. When you've been in business this long, and you get develop a lot of pretty close friends. Well, once in a while, unfortunately, one of them passes away, and so if it's somebody I was pretty close to, I try to go to their funeral. And I'm
oh
mentioning that
wow,
you would be shocked probably that how many customers I've gotten from just going to somebody's funeral, and they
Oh,
see me there, and they come in and say, "Boy, I really appreciate you going to my dad's funeral," and that's happened more times than I care to remember. But that's the kind of relationship you develop with some of these customers.
well, we're hoping that they're going to respect us. And in return, you go ahead and do something like honoring their family by not going over there and handing out business cards, but just saying, hey, we're here to support you in your time of need. That speaks volumes, right? In return, where are they going to go? They're going to want to pay back in kindness, so to speak.
Well, really, what it is, what he's really saying there is that it's about how you treat the customer as a person, and the better you treat them and show them respect, now that's just coming back to you. And
Exactly. Absolutely.
in a lot of cases, unfortunately, some of our customers don't get that, and I don't like that. I like that we do a great job of that, but I don't like when I hear that customers of ours go somewhere else and don't get the same respect that they deserve. One of the things I think that I learned a long, long time ago from my dad was that every person you encounter, that walks into your store, that you deal with, wherever their dollar bill is the same color as yours, and they have to work very hard to get it, just like you do. And if you remember that, you're going to treat them the right way.
Absolutely. Talking about community, talking about the people in our communities, from what I understand, you guys are very involved with the communities that you serve. There's something called Stuff the Trucks. How does that work?
Stuff the trucks is something that we have some fun doing, where it's a matter of parking one of our delivery trucks at the Walmart doors and really stuffing the trucks with canned goods and food
oh, wow.
for the food banks. Additionally, I think that, one thing, I think maybe you brought up COVID a little bit ago, that I really noticed during COVID was a lot of the long lines that were around some of the schools, the elementary schools around here, of people that were lining up just to get food. And that was something that really resonated with me.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of kids that go to school and they're getting, a free lunch at school. And then on the weekends, they're sending food home with them so that they're sure to have food for the weekend. That's something that, we've done a lot in our communities, of just trying to give to our local food banks, for sure.
I got to say, guys, that's amazing. I mean, just the thought alone of being able to be out there and just give back to the communities that we serve. It goes back to what you said, Michael. You respect the customer. You give them that respect. You show them that respect. And it's not always about, you shop with me, so let me, then I'll do this. It's just to respect all the way around. You respect the community will come back and serve it. I love that idea. So as you're doing this, where did the ideas come from? Mike, was it from you that you wanted to serve the communities? You wanted to give back? Is there other things that you guys do as well?
Well, we do a lot of things. Of course, I think I mentioned earlier, I was always getting some kind of an idea from TRIB or APRO. And I used to be a dealer out in Western Kansas. He's retired now. But Kenny Spaniers, probably a lot of guys know who he is. I'd go out and we'd talk, and I'd see him at shows. We get a lot of good ideas. Of course, he was in a town smaller than Hutchinson, and so we just come up with different ideas. And some of them work, some of them didn't. But we did a lot of things with the schools, and I think each Christmas we'd come up with a bicycle for different kids and that type of thing. And it's just something that pops in your head once in a while, and you try it out. Some of the stuff we did year in and year out, and they expect you to do it. And of course, a lot of high school kids come in for donations to whatever they're having, and we always try that. So it comes back to help you out, and it doesn't cost you a lot of money, really. So,
I've heard you mention APRO a couple of times, and I know that we're going to kind of get into everybody's background here because we're kind of, it's at that point. You're a 40 plus year member of APRO. Even your membership is in legendary status at this point in time. You've mentioned it quite a lot. Over 4 decades, you've been involved in TRIB. You're involved in the Kansas Rental Dealer Association. Can we start there? How important to you and to you guys is being a part of the Kansas Rental Dealer Association?
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for asking. Well, listen, obviously, like you mentioned earlier, rent to own really got its start in the state of Kansas, over in Wichita, Kansas. And so I think having the ability to kind of carry that message on, and more so at state level, is pretty darn cool. I'm very grateful to continue to be the president of the State Rental Dealers Association. But more so, Dad mentioned Kenny. And I think that in speaking about our State Rental Dealers Association, and really regarding the political side of it, we're really blessed in our state to be very close to a lot of our state senators, but more so is Jim Brown. Jim Brown is somebody, he's retired probably 2-3 years ago, not very long ago, but Jim Brown was really somebody who, I numerous times would call and make sure that I knew when the legislative conference was going to be happening, make sure that I was calling, on our congressmen, making donations, doing anything and everything that all of us could to have a positive relationship with them and make sure that they really understood the truth about rent to own. I think that there's a lot of, things that are out there that are mistruths about our industry, which is obviously additional why we're all kind of here today, is to kind of lay some groundwork and some background as to, what we are and what we can provide for not just our communities, but one another as well. But Jim Brown has been somebody that's been a huge part of our industry.
Well, kind of talking about APRO and talking about the Kansas Rental Dealer Association, you play a lot of roles in that. But what made you decide that as you were growing up, you wanted to stay in rent-to-own? Because you actually went out to do something else, right? Did you go into nursing? Is that right?
Yeah, I went into nursing, but I got a phone call from my brother. Got a phone call from my brother that and it was a very pivotal moment for me. That he really, said verbatim, you need to really consider coming back under the family umbrella. I tried, we both tried to not do rent to own, not because we didn't love it, but more so because it seemed like it was the easy way out. It would be like, okay, we really didn't go out and try to experience something else. But, we came back at a young age, and honestly, like, it's the best job in the world, right? To be able to come to work every day and be able to work alongside my dad and my brother. We're pretty lucky to be able to do so. I continue, and so does my brother. We continue to learn something about rent to own, about how to handle something, or, bouncing ideas off of dad every single day. And so I think for that in and of itself, it's not work for us. It's fun. We have fun. And every single day is different.
All right, Michael. So what happened? What was behind the phone call that you were like, hey, pants on fire, let's come, you got to come back? No, I'm just kidding. But what was behind the phone call that made such a difference?
Well, I was ahead of her because I'm a couple of years.
5 years.
5 years older. I got you.
And so I first came back. I went out and tried a bunch of different things and really learned a lot about, I learned a lot about business. It's funny when you said earlier, learning some things, what not to do. I learned a lot about, from places that I had worked, about what doesn't work. And then I also realized really quickly that I didn't want someone else to be responsible for my success. So I live in Wichita, and there's a lot of aircraft manufacturing there, for example. A lot of people, go and work in those factories, and then they show up to work one day and they're like, we're laying all you guys off. And then, they're on a layoff for, whatever, 3 months. And then it's, then they're back again and everything's great. I just knew that I didn't want to do that. So I came back first and started working, and we opened up a store. And then I don't know how long I did that before I called you, but that's when I sort of, I figured out that, this can work, and we can. There was a lot of opportunity here, but we needed help. Really is what it was. And Angie, at the time, I don't know, were you living down in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty. I think at the time we wanted to be able to grow our business, and made it a little difficult to do so if you didn't really have the people.
Right.
And so at that time, it was.
Angie's kind of like a last resort. Is that what
Wow. Very, very good.
I mean, I didn't want to say that. But.
Wow. And now it's just out there on the RTO podcast.
Okay, so let's find out. When you called her to come back, and Angela, when you came back, how many stores were there compared to what there is now?
There were 3. And so, see, Pete, what happened?
So 11 stores later, here we are, right? So I don't know. I think it was a good call. Mike. You go reach out and phone somebody, and they come back and help the family business. Dad has got 40 plus years in APRO. He's mentioned it 3 or 4 times. With you, Angela and Michael, how important is APRO to you guys? Mike has seen the importance. He's seen, the camaraderie, the ability to go and see people that, hey, I don't understand this, or I need help with this, or maybe offer some kind of, there was in 40 years, I know, Mike, that you know a lot of things that maybe other people didn't know, that maybe you were able to help them. How is it important to you guys now to be a part of APRO? And have you seen the same benefits that Mike has?
Yes. I think that really APRO and TRIB, in my opinion, they share, really a lot of the same membership. And I think that we talked earlier a little bit about our customer side of it, and how we have, generation after generation coming through our stores. The people that Michael and I have been introduced to from our dad, at the APRO shows, at TRIB, at like an RTO World type of an event, they've become our family. It's, I think that that's something that most people say something about that in our industry. We're all very close. We were just on the phone earlier with Dan Fisher. We've talked to Mike Tissett today, Sean Rush. We're all just very Kevin Silvers.
Who doesn't talk to Kevin Silvers, right?
Silvers. But we're just a very tight industry. So a lot of the people that, Dad would come back and mention, I heard, Chris Bolin mentioned this, Len Leach mentioned that. He would mention those names to us. And then here we are going to shows, and we're surrounded with those people. We're having conversations with them, bouncing ideas off of them. And so I think for me, some of those names and some of those people in our industry are people that, instinctively being, a daughter, my dad mentions a name, therefore they're on a pedestal in my head, and rightfully so. So I think we're able to learn so many things from those primarily men outside of, Cynthia.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because we're going to talk about you in just a minute, being one of the, I wouldn't say few females, but one of the females in the rent-to-own industry, because it is a highly dominated male industry, and I'm glad to see you here. Talking about family, Mike, be honest. You can tell me the truth.
I don't know.
What is it like working with your children? What is it like working with them and watching them kind of go up through the ranks and, making a phone call and popping out 11 stores later? What is that like? How is that feeling? If it's bad, you can't. It's not my fault.
Yes.
We can edit this part out.
Yeah.
Somebody had to do it. No, I really feel like I'm fortunate, because there's a lot of dealers out there that, not too far down the road, they're going to want to get out of the business. And even Jim Brown, when he got out of business, there was nobody to take it over. So he basically just sold it. So I'm fortunate that I have somebody that, I've let them run this business now for, I don't know how many years, quite a while. Because I just quit going to the shows and let them do it. So they know what to do. And so I'm really fortunate I have somebody can take it over when I decide to retire. I retire every night, but I get that question a lot. But it's like any family. Sometimes you have some disagreements, and sometimes, most of the time, everything runs real smooth. So it's been good. It's been, like I said, I've been fortunate. And
Well, let's turn that around. Let's flip that over, guys. Honestly, what is it like working with Dad? Not in the past, right? We've all kind of grown up. We've kind of get to where we are now. What is it really like to work? And I wish I could say this. I honestly could. How is it like working with somebody that has been in the business for over 40 years, that has had the ability to start something and then maintain it over a long period? I mean, I know Fortune 500 companies that haven't lasted this long. So it's a testament to the fact that it's gotten this long. It's grown to where it's at. What is it like working with Dad? Good, bad, or indifferent? What is it like working with Dad? We always look at each other like,
It's great. We have a lot of fun, and we are terribly fortunate that we get to do it every single day. It's also, I'll tell you, it's a lot of pressure because he started and built he sort of covered up or glossed over some of the getting started stuff here when they first got started. Not only were they doing deliveries after we closed, but for the first few months they were sleeping in the back of the store because
wow.
they couldn't afford a place to stay. Starting a business from zero, from nothing, very hard, and he has built what we consider to be a great business. We don't want to screw it up, for lack of a better way to put it. So there's a little pressure there, but over the years, he's taught us really, really, really well. And maybe in spite of some of us sometimes not really doing the best job picking up what he's saying, but we finally figured it out eventually. But it is there's a lot to be said for getting to go to work with your family every day. And also I work with my sister every day. That's great too. It is hard sometimes because from time to time, he is wrong.
That does not happen very often.
Well, that was going to be the third question is, what is it like working with a sibling? Because it's not the same as working with Dad or somebody that, a paternal or maternal somebody. This is a sibling here.
It is a sibling, and thank you for pointing that out, that I am the younger sibling, Pete. And but really what Dad meant to say was between the three of us, and Michael left out, was that I am the humor. I bring the humor. I'm the funniest of the bunch. But I think in all seriousness, it is an incredible amount of pressure. I think, like what Michael said, to be able to continue on what Dad has built. But at the same time,
that's redundant. Continue on.
Continue on. It's redundant.
I just continue. I'm just going to continue. Thank you. Okay, so continue. Dad was already built, but I also think that, if I was going to have somebody, there are people that do the same thing that we do. That their father has left them the business, if you will. And it can be very lonely to not have somebody to really bounce ideas off of. And it can be an incredible challenge. Thankfully, the partner that I get to have is somebody who I grew up with. We know each other's flaws. We know each other's strengths. And, that can be both positive and negative. But I think the good thing about it is that I wouldn't want to have, if Dad wasn't here, I wouldn't want to have anybody else be my partner in growing the business. We work very well off of one another, and we're very open and extremely blunt with one another with our opinions.
What I'd say, sorry, Pete, is that, and I think Angie, you mentioned it earlier. We genuinely love coming to work every single day. We are at work, but this is what we love to do. And we want to figure out how to make this work or fix this or see what we can do with that. And both of us, I think that comes from being raised in a true entrepreneur, mindset from the time we, certainly as far back as I can remember, which is really, really what that's where this business really comes from, right? Is him or other rental dealers deciding, hey, I'm going to go off on my own and I'm going to see if I can make this work. And being an entrepreneur is hard. Starting a small business is hard, but there's a reason why we do hard things. And we both love coming to work and seeing what we can do. I mean, we just love it. So we are very, very fortunate that we get to do it, but we have a really good time when we do it.
Well, I got to say hats off to you guys, because I think if me and my brothers were all in a room and we were the ones leading the company, the only thing I can say that would come great out of that situation is that working with a sibling, regardless of whether you agree or disagree, you have the trust. And if they're saying something that you don't agree with, it's not because I don't like you, this is stupid. It's more like, I really believe that there's something here that either it 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 at this moment, or I really would need you to see it from this point of view, because it's a real thing. It's not just an ego thing. It's not just a, hey, I don't agree with you because I don't agree with you. It's really a, hey, let's get our minds together because I really see this in a different light. Let's work on this better. Mike, you never told me that you spent the nights in the back room of the store. You kind of left that out as we're thumbing through the Legend series here. How did that work? I mean, what was happening at that point that you were like, hey, it speaks volumes to say this is not going to beat me no matter what. But what was going on then that you had that going on?
Well, we moved to Hutchinson, and we basically left our family in St. Louis, and Fred left his family in Springfield, and we came out here, and we got started a little quicker than what we planned, and we hadn't rented an apartment, and then as time went, in the first probably 3 months, we spent a lot of money, and the building we rented had an upstairs and a shower and a washer and dryer, all that kind of stuff, and that was a decision we made because we basically needed the money. And then after probably 4 or 5 or 6 months, there was a pretty nice apartment building, believe it or not, right next to our store, and there was a pretty good supermarket across the street. So we rented one of those apartments next door, and we just kept going from there. And then sooner or later, we had more money, and we bought a house, and just went from there.
Tell Pete what the mortgage rate was on your house, because we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, the mortgage rate on our house at that time was 14.7.
Wow.
I always remember the very first payment I made on that house. I think the payment was $500 and some dollars, and I made the payment, and $4 of that $500 and some dollars.
I've got to say that there are a lot of blessings that have been passed down through the years. I can tell you that I somehow lucked out. I'm not at 3.5% on my house, and even that is like a miracle. I see some of the guys now that are getting into like 7%, and I'm going, oh my God, 14%. Oh my God. But you know what? It's things like that is, I was talking to Waylon Russell or Russell Waylon, and he said that, what's worse than that? Having no money at all, not having the ability to do it. Right. So you take what at the time, you take what you can. If you really want to build it, you're going to take what you can. You're going to make the most of it. And in the end, 44 years later, 14 stores later, 2 heirs later, you kind of show up when you need to show up for work later. I mean, it's that because you've earned that. You've worked your way to that point. That's not something that's, it's easily said and very, very hard to do. And, going through that, it's one of those things. I mean, to say that you've been able to accomplish so much, to keep it going, to have it in the family, to be well known in the communities, to be a part of APRO and TRIB for as long as you have, to be able to literally sit here with, and I'm not saying that all the legends can't do that, but I haven't had any legends that have their children or siblings sitting together. They don't. I mean, that is a testament to how Mike's Rentone has made it throughout the years. But I do have to ask a question, and I don't mean this in any way, but I do want to ask, where did the name Mike's Rentone come from? I see Rent-A-Sitter, I see Arona, Mike's just like, hey, this is my spot, right? Is that how it happened? This is Mike's red zone. That's the way it is.
Well, I think I can remember what happened is when Curtis Mathis filed bankruptcy, they sent us a rather rude letter and said, "Hey, you got to take all these signs down," and because they were selling what was left of it to some place in China, and we had to come up with a name real quick. And I've been to a couple of marketing seminars and stuff, and the concept was you need to keep it. You don't need to advertise the name Curtis Mathis like we had been. You don't need to advertise Zenith. You need to advertise something a little more personal to the business. So that's what I put a lot of thought into it. That's what I came up with.
I love it. I love it. Nobody's going to forget that. Nobody's going to forget that. Talking about you guys, so I got to know, when you come together and you guys make decisions as, who you are in the business, how do you settle the disagreements? When, Michael, you say it's green, Angela, you say it's red, how do we settle those disagreements? Do we call Dad? Is it like, hey, let's put on the gloves, go in the next room? Like, how does it work?
I don't remember ever having a disagreement.
No, that never happened.
The short answer is there 100% are disagreements. It happens, every once in a while. But no, I mean, if Michael and I have a disagreement, in Dad's office, as an example, Dad's he doesn't really chime in, as most parents kind of don't. They just, we figure it out. We talk through it, and it really kind of boils down to there are moments that we can actually both be right. And we tend to find that middle ground pretty easily. Of course, it obviously depends on what the discussion is about. But for the most part, we really are able to find the middle ground, for sure.
Michael, she's said several times she's the younger sibling. Now, have you ever pulled out I'm the older brother, this is how it's going to go? I'm just curious.
Well, I try to not remind her of my. She does a good enough job reminding me that I'm older, as I guess what I would say. But no, we don't. We do have disagreements, and we do, really butt heads on. I don't know what the topic would be, but really what we're doing there is figuring it out and trying to find the best way forward and the best decision. And what we have figured out over the years as we've been doing this is that you have to have that discussion and you have to have those disagreements to really find the right answer in a lot of respects. If it's just continually, we're just going to do this, and there's no discussion and there's no real serious thought to it, you can get in the weeds really quickly. And then I would also say that every now and again, when it doesn't happen so much when we're talking something through and we're trying to come to the right answer. A lot of times when we're both on the same page and we're really coming up with something that's a really bad decision, which every now and again happens. Every now and again, Dad will say, yeah, maybe we ought to think a little bit more about that. That's what we'll get. So really, he lets us, make all the decisions, do what we feel like we need to do. But he's certainly there in the background when he needs to be to keep us from doing something that maybe we shouldn't do, which, has happened from time to time.
Well, Mike, this is something that I got to know. You've done it for 44 years. You have great people, family taking over the driving the reins now. But what is the secret sauce that you can, and it doesn't have to be one thing, but what is that secret sauce that you say, starting this many years ago, kind of going through the ranks, the differences, the Henry B. Gonzalez's, everything that's been going on, the high interest rates, what is the secret sauce of making it, the longevity, getting through it? Is it bringing family on and making this a family affair? What is your go-to to say, what, this is what I've held on to for the last 4 decades that has helped bring me to this point?
Oh, I don't think I know. It's mainly, you got to have a good work ethic. And then the other thing I've always gone by, I've tried to stick to, is basically a phrase that says, never give up and do the best you can. In fact, I have that tattoo on my shoulder here. I got in the military, but do the best job you can, and and go home at night satisfied you did the best you could. And then don't be afraid to say you're wrong, and don't be afraid to take somebody else's advice. So don't give up, and just keep plugging along. The next thing you know, it's 44 years.
Well, let's talk about some of the accomplishments that we've been able to secure as far as being the patriarch of the family and who's been following. Angela, you are the president of the Kansas Rental Dealer Association. Is that right?
That is a fact.
That is factual. What does that mean to you to be the president? Like, I know we talked a little bit about it earlier. What does it mean not only to be in it, but to be president in the state that Dad opened up his first rent-to-own, and now you have 14 other locations or 13 other locations?
Well, I think it's more the people that I get to surround myself with, on our board. When I first was asked to be president, Gloria Holmeyer was over there, Dad was there, Jim Brown, and Sean Rush. Sean Rush really took me under his wing and really kind of guided me through all of that. He's a fellow Kansas University Jayhawk. I'd like to point that out just in case John Cleek Jr. is watching. We beat them just recently. You don't need to edit that part out, Pete. But back to KRDA.
John's going to give me a call on that one.
What? Yes, you and I both.
I hope so.
Anyway, it is important. It's nice to be able to be the president, but also, once COVID kind of happened, we kind of like what you're describing. We have some dealers that have really kind of disappeared, or they have retired, but we are an incredibly tight-knit state. All of our dealers, we talk quite frequently with the majority of them, whether it's emailing or see them at the show. And we don't have very many issues in our state. It's pretty nice to be able to be the president, but more so the fact that I think it might just be me and Sandy Fry. I think we might be the only two female presidents. I think that might be true. So I take pride in that aspect of it. Given the fact that we're in a male-dominated industry, that's something that I do take a lot of pride in.
Well, I see also you helped found the LEAP program. You were mentioned in the Women's Forum as far as APRO goes, doing extremely well as far as representing the female leadership in the RTO industry, and absolutely appreciated. But Michael is not to be outdone. Just so that you know, he didn't just say, Andrew's going to take the wheel on this one. You're currently serving on the APRO board, Michael. Is that right?
Yes.
So you're currently is it a vice president of this? You were the second vice president, though, correct?
Second vice president this year, yeah.
Absolutely making it happen. What is serving on the board? Dad holds APRO in high regard. I don't know if you know that, but he has mentioned that. Mm-hmm. You are now serving on the board of APRO. What does it mean to you, to both of you, to have your son on the board of APRO, and also for you, Michael, to be on that board?
Well, I'll go first. I think it's first of all, APRO is very, very, very important to us, as you just mentioned, because of everything that it's done to help our family and to help our family's business. It's also very important to our industry. So it is something that I just really wanted to be a part of if I could. That's why I originally got on the board. The other thing about being on the board is that it's made up of a great group of people that really want to do whatever they can to help the rent-to-own industry. And those are people that I like to be around and I want to surround myself with. So really, I'm really, and especially now with Charles, running APRO, that's been a big positive change, and he's really doing a lot of really great things for the industry, and I'm really close with Dan Fisher, for example. John Cleek Jr. is on the board now. It's just a really good group of people, and so I think it gives me an opportunity to, in some way, give back to an industry that has frankly given me everything, and so that's something that I'm going to continually be interested in doing.
Well, Michael, I think you're doing a great job. Kudos to you. I will say that every time I see the APRO board, I feel like I'm surrounded by the heads of state, and I kind of feel like these guys were people that I didn't have my dad to talk to, but my managers, my regionals, my directors, my VPs, they would mention these names in passing. I have no idea who they're talking about. And to actually go and see these people firsthand, to be able to talk to them, to hear how they've handled the industry for so long, their ideas moving forward, what it was that they brought to the table. I leave dumbfounded all the time. Talking about prestige, you won the Heritage Award. You were awarded the Heritage Award, right? Mike, how does that feel to have your son presented with the Heritage Award?
That feels great. And as far as APRO is concerned, I think that's great too, because I think it gives both of them a better opportunity to keep the business running after I move on. So that's just a good thing. And I wish I'd have done more of that, but I convinced myself I didn't have time. But yeah, I think that's really commendable.
Well, Mike, I wouldn't sell yourself short. You have a legacy sitting right next to you. So I think you've done a really, really good job. I just want to say that, you guys have done an amazing thing. What you have is bold. It's unique to the fact that you have your business that started from literally nothing, without telling everybody that you slept in the back room, to you have somebody on the board of APRO. You have your daughter who's the president of the KRDA. You yourself are a legend in this business. You guys are doing amazing work. I mean, I want to tell you in closing, like, you guys are really the superstars that are taking this forward. And Mike, I'm glad that you're able to kind of head that and be able to pass the reins off. It's been amazing to really kind of say, I get you guys on one podcast all together. I love that. I think it's amazing. If you have, because you're there. Usually I ask this and nobody's sitting next to them. What is the one bit of advice, Mike, that you would want to, if you had that wall up and you couldn't see them right now, what is something that you would say to each one of them? This is something, they're going to get the business. They're obviously doing a great job taking care of that right now. But as you do what you want to do, whether it's play golf every day, whether it's, whatever it is you want to do, moving on to their success, what's something that you're going to say to them? This is what I believe. You do this and it's going to be golden.
Well, I would I would basically say, look, you know what to do. You know what's got us where we are, which is treating customers like they should be treated, a good work ethic. And, this is not going to sound real exciting, but continue to do what you're doing and you'll be just fine.
Well, sometimes, that's not necessarily simple advice, because I think sometimes we as human beings want to perfect something and we try to change it. We try to make it better. But sometimes that core is really what makes you successful. Stick with it. Work hard. Learn to do what you do very well. Hone that blade. Make sure that you're doing what you did that got you here. Now, you always want to be thinking in the forefront, maybe there's a better way. Maybe this is a new way to do it. But you don't want to stop the work ethic and what got you to exactly to where you are. Guys, so asking kind of everybody on this one, where do we see Mike's Rent to Own in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? I think I'm going to, I think I'm going to go along the line. Mike, where do you see Mike's Rent to Own in 5 years?
5 years, I would say instead of 14 stores, we'd probably have 20.
Wow, that's nice. Okay, Angela, 10 years from now, where are we at? Where's Mike's Rent to Own in 10 years?
Well, apparently we are going to be at 20 stores. I think that we have a tendency to really, it's not only our dream to continue to grow the business. We want to be able to not only grow the business, but we want to be able to be in the markets and the places where we currently aren't, and to be able to provide for customers. Additionally, we want to be able to provide jobs for more people. Those kinds of things are really important to us. But I think to kind of make it very simplistic, has to continue to be fun for us. Right now, we are having a blast doing what we're doing. So if we can make it very simple of just to continue to grow and provide not only for our coworkers, but also for the communities that we're in, I think that would be all we could really ask for.
All right, Michael, you're the one in the hot seat now. 5, 10, 20 years. I see you as you're the visionary here. What's going on? Where are we at in 20 years? Where is there going to be a point where you and Angela are kind of having this, this sit down again with somebody else, with maybe your children or somebody else, and kind of doing what Dad's doing right now? I mean, what do you see in 20 years?
In 20 years, I would say we're still right here plugging away. Yeah, I'm going to be a couple of years older, 20 years older to be exact.
Right.
If it's 20 years from now,
That would be true.
that'd be 20 years.
Yep.
I would be really excited to see, Pete, how much we've grown. There will certainly be growth between now and then, but I would be really excited to see how many employees we have at that point and how many people we're working with. That would be really what I would be thinking about looking 20 years out. Very, very hard to even comprehend that. But 20 years from now, I would say we have a whole bunch more people that we're working with, and we'd be that 20 years from now. I'd be that's a long time. That's about
how about I throw you guys something a little bit easier? And I know that we've been kind of going back and forth, Mike. You're the legend here, so I don't want you to think I'm leaving you out. But it's never, I never get the opportunity to speak to a family the way I have, and I know that your legacy is sitting right next to you. What would you guys, Michael and Angela, say to some of the up and coming second generation owners that are out there? You guys are already in the spot. You're kind of doing it now. What would you say to some of those people that are starting to come up? For instance, I had Ben Leach on a Friday, the Black Friday special. He's now coming into it. He doesn't have the same time frame in the business as you do. He's had it younger, and he's starting to CEO now. But what are some of the things that you would say to these second generation possible owners in the future that you kind of know right now?
Well, I would say first of all, I would say Ben Leach has somebody to rely on specifically that's one of the best to ever do it, and he's doing great things now, and he's going to continue to do so. For other people that are just coming into this business, I would say that you have to remember the most important things are taking care of your customer and taking care of your employee. And as long as you focus on those things and then use what our dad has been talking about, which is just simply to never give up and have good work ethic and just come in every day and try to make it a little bit better, and you're going to make it. But it's called work for a reason, and it's going to be hard. But doing hard things, are what we should be doing. So that's what I would say about it is just jump in with both feet and give her a whirl, and it'll come out okay.
Travel the road less traveled. Take care of your family. Take care of your friends. Take care of your customers. Take care of your people. Angela, what would you add to that?
I think that I obviously would echo that. We know Ben, and for those of us that are second generation, we kind of are.
It's like a little club.
It is a little cool kids club.
Cool kids club.
But I think in addition to that, I would tell somebody that's just coming into it that it's okay to fail as long as you're failing forward, that it's okay to screw up. You're going to screw up. You're going to make mistakes, and it's going to be okay. But I think that I would really encourage them to be a member of TRIB, be a member of APRO, and come to the shows, because that's really where you're going to learn the most, and to be able to rely on whether it's Chris Bolin or Dan Fisher, you're going to find those people wandering around, and all of them are very open. Mike Tissett, they're all very open and willing to give you any advice, answer any question that you have. So I think that would be my first and foremost. But then the second part of that is going to be to, if you really sit there and focus on it for a moment, you really know exactly what at least for Michael and I, what our dad's goal was. And it's not about the money. It really isn't. And it's really about
who's Mike Tissett? He's the rep-on
Dad. It's really about taking care of the customer at the end of the day, and treating your people with respect. And I think that as long as you're doing those two things, you're gonna be just fine. And I would also say, just continue to have fun with it. It really is just the absolute best industry that's out there.
Well, I will tell you this. I give you guys a little nugget before we leave. 2 people that stand out to me. Now, everybody is spot on. I mean, there's nobody that you've mentioned, and there's so many that we haven't mentioned that are amazing in this industry. But 2 people that really have helped me with what I've done in the podcast and moving on. And that was Dan Fisher. You mentioned him, Michael, and Mike Tissett that you mentioned, Angela. So Dan Fisher was one of my first interviewees, and it was off camera. It was off script. It was literally on a phone. I was trying to record what he was saying on this little recorder because I didn't have anything at that point in time. But, he gave me a lot of great advice and a lot of things that we talked about. And that stood out to me because at that point in time, he didn't know me from Adam. And yet he took out the time to sit there and talk to me and really do, a little bit of mentorship, kind of like your father does with you guys, and just kind of give you that advice and some of the things that I really didn't even think about. I didn't know about. And he really sat down and talked to me about that. And then I will say the first time I had a partner, in the first couple seasons of this, and he had decided that he was going to go a different way and kind of do something different. And I had no idea where I was going to take the podcast from there. Because we were cross banter. It was like, that's what it was. And the idea of having somebody on the show was daunting because I didn't know what I was doing then. I didn't know these big people that it was, I wanted to talk to. Like, he said, Angela, these guys are up there. And the first person that said that he would be on the show was Mike Tissett. And in our world, guys, if you don't know this, landing Mike Tissett on your first recording is like, Johnny Carson pulling somebody out of the air. It was like, I didn't know that, he would do it, but it made such a difference to the podcast and how it was welcomed. And I'll always appreciate him for that. Mike, I wish it was you. I'm sorry that it wasn't you. I didn't know you back then, but I wish I'd had you on the show. We could have done a 3 with Mike. But, some of the accolades that I want to get into before we go. Angela, you're doing a great job. You're the vice president currently at Mike's Rent-A-Own. Isn't that right?
Mm-hmm. So
the vice president, kind of doing your thing as the president of the KRDA, helping find the founder of the LEAP program, with you and others. Amazing job. Michael, kind of running the business with your sister, APRO board member, Heritage Award recipient, KRDA member as well. You've helped develop a couple of other things as far as that's called the intro to RTO. Is that something that you kind of help get with? And then we've got Mike, who sits quiet over there. He's very quiet, but done an amazing job in this world, in the RTO industry, founded in 1981 in a small town in Kansas. And then all these stores later, you have a family, you have a legacy. Kudos to you, over 100 employees, just to say that alone. Small business is so important in this country right now. To say now that you've taken it from where it was to 100 employees, not so small anymore, but that's amazing. And I really appreciate that you've even been able to take some time to be on this Legends podcast, doing the stuff to trucks, and I love the name. It's really right on the nose, but then that's what it's about, right? Getting straight to the point and making it happen with the people that are the communities that we serve. And now being on part of, which I appreciate, the Legends series here with you guys, Angela, Michael, really glad that you guys had the time to come out here, bring Dad along with you, just sit down and have a good old time and talk to me for a little bit. I want to say I do appreciate it. Guys, what I will tell you is we thank everybody, especially you guys, for watching. The Legends series is so important to kind of share their stories, where they've been, where they're going, and what's going to happen. The leaders in the industry. If you want to know more, hit me up at the show, Pete at the RTO Show podcast.com. You can go to the website at www.thertoshowpodcast.com. Welcome to look in there, buy some swag. We can use it. Get down there, put your name in there. I will reach out to you if you have that. You can see some of the shenanigans that I've been able to get into, some crazy stuff, some videos that I've been in. We are on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube where you're going to see this. Guys, I really appreciate you being a part of the show. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to tell you guys, as always, get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys are amazing. I appreciate it. Hey everyone, it's Pete Shau here from the RTO Show podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space. Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing. And let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, These folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together. They design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too.